Peace. Hope everybody's doing well. Today is November 8th, 2020. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. Today's topic will be the residual effects of poverty and how it's affected the psyche of melanated people in the ghettos in America. I got my brother Marcus with me, very close brother, very close friend. He's part of my tribe, here to disseminate intellectual thought, property, and perspective. Marcus.
Thank you for the introduction, Eric. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for hosting me on your channel. Thank you to the listeners for tuning in to this channel. I believe Eric has a very brilliant message, very brilliant guy. Love what he's doing with this channel and his message, and I'm honored to be here as to partake in the activities on this platform and to hold discussion to the viewers out there. I've known Eric for well over a decade, man. Brilliant guy, brilliant message. Always, even keeled, and I learn a lot and take a lot of lessons from this guy and use them in my everyday approach in life. So once again, thank you very much for having me, brother.
Yes, sir. So we see the current state of our people since 1965 with the Welfare Act. Mm-hmm. We see that Vietnam era from 1955 to approximately 1975, we see how we lost our autonomous state from the 40s, 30s, 20s, and teens, World War I era, Black Wall Street, even before that, Wheatsville, Brownsville, 1839 or 1838. We were very independent at that time.
Tulsa, Rosewood, all those places. Yeah.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And when the late 60s and 70s came, yes.
Yeah, Seneca Village in Central Park.
In Central Park,
yeah.
Right. And we see the current state that we're in right now, single parent homes are almost 80%.
Really?
Right? Bordering on that, maybe 75 to 77%.
Wow.
And we see the effect of not having the masculine principle in the home. Mm-hmm. This is very detrimental to our society, and it creates a lot of confusion as far as children when they're being raised without the duality of both perspectives, both principles. Mm-hmm. Talk to that.
Well, do you want me to talk first about the economic principles of the melanated community, or do you want me to address
the economic effect first?
Okay, yes. So, my opinion on that, I think that the economic effect has been devastating, and it's obvious. Anyone with two eyes can see when you go to any part of any city in America, what you will usually see is that when people of melanated, skin color, the poverty is, there's usually an association with poverty, a lack of resources in comparison to other communities here in America. I think that the effects of single parents in the home are definitely, I would say single parent households, one parent, I think that definitely is a factor, not the entire factor, but it definitely is a contributing factor when you look in comparison to maybe perhaps other people's homes or other, other communities into their structure and homes. You can definitely say that in comparing apples to apples. I do also believe, though, that the culture here in the community has an effect to that as well, where we've almost adopted a culture of struggle, which is not necessarily our culture as a people. So I guess, does that answer your question? Or, because I didn't want to get too deep, but I think that it's almost like bicameral, or, in layman's term, the yin and the yang in our community, where it's two-pronged, but the economic effects, the lack of economics here in our community is devastating. And obviously, I do believe it's an important topic, and we need to take measures to change that. So,
yeah, absolutely. Lack of economics creates social relations of struggle, aka gangs. That's what a gang is a group of people with the same social relations. What is the relation? The relation is that lack of opportunity, access to wealth, to self-governing, to autonomizing yourself, and especially masculine energy, we thrive toward power and authority. So when there's lack of power and authority, we create our own order, if you will, when we don't see it around us. And this is where gang culture comes from. And it's really supposed to be there to protect the community from the occupying force, but it begins to implode on itself. And we become parasites upon ourselves based on the lack of economics. Go ahead.
Brilliant, brother, brilliant. And I will, basically to your point, when my son was about 10 or 11 years old, I made him read a book called The Lord of the Flies. And it was about, a group of boys, they even had a film about it, but a group of boys abandoned on an island, and they sort of created this like structure or hierarchy of society that was supposed to defend itself from the wild boars and the evil inhabitants of the island. And eventually, as they were stranded for more and more days, gangs had sort of developed, to prey on the weaker boys, and then there was one kid that sort of stood up. But yes, that is basically what takes place, is that when you have a structureless society, or the lost boys, they sort of form their own gang without structure and rules, which the predecessors or the men of the community are there to provide.
Facts. And so when they're creating this order, it's a lot of disorder while the order's trying to be created. And we see where we are right now in 2020 with what we call gang culture. Me, myself, I mentor a lot of gang members out here in these streets. Me and my brother Sensei from Next Barbershop, shout out to Sensei. And we see that most of them are lacking fathers in their home. The mothers are trying their best with the limited resources and understanding that they have, but these young men need masculine energy around, and for whatever reason, the masculine energy is absent in the home, and we see residual effects of it. We see that young male energy, masculine energy, are taking on the qualities of the mother, which is, when he gets older, that's not going to work in a society, on a planet that's ran by patriarchal energy, if you will. He has to have that understanding of what masculine energy is.
Right.
Yes, the mother's the first teacher and the nurturer, but once he reaches his teen years, I would say about 14 and on, he needs really to be around his father, for his father to encompass and instill certain things within him, so he can be able to understand how to deal with things logically and not emotionally. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, to your point, excellent point. Once again, you definitely need the father in the home, and it goes back to my point. Well, actually, my point to your point basically is that you need the yin and the yang. You need balance. Mothers provide a very, very excellent job with showing their, offspring, both boy and girl, nurture, caring, and all the good things that women bring to the table. But masculine energy is there because, fathers or, uncles, grandfathers, whoever, male masculine energy provides a counterbalance to that yin that the mother provides. And what I mean, and I'm speaking in the sense of me being a father, I don't mentor, I mentor basically kids that play basketball, hoops. I train them along with my son. And I do realize that, at times those kids who don't necessarily have a strong masculine presence or a father around, they tend to sometimes communicate different than children who do, And that's my job to see that difference in communication. And like Eric has always told me, you have to bring yourself down to the level of that student in order to get, through to that kid, And I use that principle in teaching my own son. And then now I do that. Well, now I employ those same principles when, working with these kids that don't have that energy. But like Eric said, that's what men do. And right now, there's a crisis of that because of, I guess, economics, or is it because of? So which one is it? The cart before the horse?
It's the destruction of the home.
Okay.
Where masculine energy is not there, balancing the yin and yang, like you said.
Right.
Of masculine and feminine energy, so the child can encompass and take in all these things in order to make them complete. And you have to be complete in order to deal with a world of competition. This is a world of competition.
Yeah.
Right? And people call us the United States of America, but it's the divided states in regards to one group is trying to box out another group and excel and pass down wealth to theirs while making sure that this group don't get nothing passed down to them. This is competition.
That's the spirit of competition.
That's the spirit of competition. And there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
You know, this is just the way the world is ran. But we have to get on board to understand, you know, proper mate selection in the first place.
Oh.
And who you're going to procreate with.
Yeah.
Just because you like somebody and they look good or they make you feel good doesn't mean that you're compatible with that person on a genetical level.
Yeah.
Genetical pool, understanding genetical pool is important. Understanding the background that person comes from.
Yeah.
So if you're a woman dating a man, you're supposed to look into his family background. What kind of resources do they have? What kind of family ailments do they have? Because your offspring might inherit these things. Then you have to be able to look at, okay, well, how me and my partner are going to operate if we're not getting along? Because in the absence of the partner, that child is going to suffer, which is what we see the black community in right now, the melanated community. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and that's another excellent point, man. Because, and you know, I don't want to seem like I'm only agreeing with your points, but I think, you know, the way you're basically, you know, expressing that is that with the lack, going back to the lack of economic opportunities, you know, you can't basically allow for, you know, exposure. And what I mean by exposure is that, okay, for example, you have children and you're raising them in America and they don't necessarily know how to compete economically because they haven't been exposed to certain things that would allow them to compete economically.
Right.
They have a very limited structure or view to the world because of the lack of resources. And I think that, you know, in the spirit of competition, like you had mentioned before, and in a game, and you know, I'll draw the parallel to sports, and I tell my young man all the time when I'm training them, look, what is it that you wish to achieve? And in whatever you wish to achieve, just look at me as the facilitator, right? So I can facilitate to get you in the room to put you into the battle, but you still have to slay the dragons. I can't do that for you.
Right.
I can't, for lack of a better words, and I'll borrow from your lexicon, clear the path for you. As a man, it's your job to go through the gauntlet. I'm just your advisor. Mr. Miyagi didn't go and fight Daniel's battles. He let Daniel, you know, fight them as, you know, when he trained him. So many young black and brown children don't have a Mr. Miyagi. They don't have somebody to train them. So if you can't train them, how can they compete?
So they're competing, excellent points, they're competing from a state of incompletion. The incompletion is how to compete. You can't compete properly unless you know what you're up against. And what you're working with. We're not working with much in the first place. And in the second place, to actually go out and execute in the gauntlet, like he said, it's very difficult when you're not, your toolkit is lacking a lot of tools in there. So when you go, other people got a full toolkit. You go in your toolkit, you're like, I don't have my Phillips screwdriver, I don't have a hammer, I don't have a wrench. So you're basically working with a very limited tool supply. And we see the residual effects, because that's the topic. What is the residual effects of poverty on the melanated community or black people in America, right? And because of this, the domino effect is we see gang culture. Because in the Prohibition from 1920 to 1933, this is where Al Capone and them came from. And the Irish and the Jews. And the Italians. Those
the gangster culture.
That was the original gangster culture. We were never gangsters in the 20s and 30s. There was no such thing as us throwing up sets. Talking about we outside.
No.
We was outside running our businesses. We were self-sufficient.
Yeah.
We didn't rely on nobody else.
Yeah.
Right? Even with all the discrimination going on at that time, the redlining going on, the Jim Crow era, we still was thriving. We had the highest success of relationship marriage-wise, because remember, before 1965, it was only so-called black and white people here. There was nobody else. Our relationship success rate was higher than theirs.
Yeah.
What happened that ours is the lowest now? Why are we bordering at 80% in as far as single parent homes, and with economics where the wealth we don't even have not even 0.5% of the wealth here in this country? Go ahead.
No, those are excellent points. Wealth is calcified here in America, and speaking from experience, my parents are immigrants to this country. I'm a first generation American here. But I will say that my parents did do quite a fantastic job in making sure that I understood how to quote unquote play the game. And when I know some of us hear the word play the game, you so automatically, I guess sort of, think I'm referencing playing the corporate game, but I'm not necessarily referring to the corporate game. I'm referring to the game of life and understanding how trade and barter and transaction works, and how to, basically think critically and, be objective and all of these things like that. Like, they actually raised me, and even the points where, I guess they raised me enough and put those principles and values in me for me to go and make my own decisions and align myself with people who share similar values and principles to help me ascend to be that person that's bigger than my community. So it did take resources, but the resources started at home. So when you talk about single parenthood, when you talk about the 80% of the children being born out of wedlock and those problems, they can be reversed, but it has to be reversed. It has to start with the family unit, like you said, and it has to be taught within the house that, look, hey, above all, you have to compete. Life is a competition, and there are going to be sunny days, cold days, gloomy days. You have to be a person for all seasons, basically. You have to, your actions has to change according to the seasons. So, but that's what you get when you have that structure at home. So can it be reversed? Definitely. But that's for a different topic, where you have to talk about a shift in the culture, and the shift in the culture going before the economic, or refocus of, the economic principles within the community,
Perfect. I want to dedicate this to Sharon Lawrence. I grew up on Coney Island. She hit me on Facebook and told me that, she had needed, I was talking about how I used to be a security back in the day, and she was like, well, I needed your protection the other day. She said a brother, quote unquote, tried to bring harm her way the other day. And she said maybe I should make that part of my topic. So this is why I'm bringing this topic up, Sharon. So now, the effects of poverty on our psyche. We don't necessarily, our behavior, from the outside looking in, it would look like we hate each other, right? But we really hate poverty. And when you create a poverty circumstance, it creates low self-esteem amongst the people that's trapped within it. The people that's trapped within it now begin to start to hate themselves because of the circumstances, subconsciously, not consciously.
Right.
You take that subconscious thing, it can't stay there, it has to go somewhere else. So you take it out on someone who looks like you, that's trapped in the same situation like you. And it becomes genocidal, because we're not suicidal. We are genocidal people by program.
Yeah.
Whether you want to call it the Willie Lynch, whether you want to get into the social engineering aspect of it, we are that answer, right?
Yeah.
This is very well proven. So we take stuff out on each other with the same transgression differently, than if someone else from outside the culture did the same transgression toward you.
Yeah.
Your energy, we have a different type of timing for each other.
Yeah.
When we feel disrespected. Go ahead.
Yeah, you know what? Great point. I believe Tretch from Naughty by Nature coined the phrase, why me? In his song, I think it's Everything's Gonna Be Alright, where he talks about, growing up in the slums and the ghetto bastard. And he touched on all of the touch points that you made earlier about, single parenthood and, this creating this, sort of problem in the hood due to, lack of economics in those types of neighborhoods. And he started the song with the saying, why me? And that's what goes through the psyche, or what, at least what I think goes through the psyche of a lot of people in, downtrodden economic, areas and situations. Like, why me? So there's a lot of angst and frustrations because it isn't like they cannot see or don't know that they are in a bad situation.
Right.
But they were born into that situation. Yeah. And some people don't necessarily but they don't necessarily have the resources to help them think their actions out of that situation. They don't help them. It's like the analogy I gave you the other day when we were with your son, and Jabril, and I was explaining to Jabril how he has to follow your actions because you will basically show him like where the landmines are. So the booby traps. A lot of people in impoverished situations don't have anyone to show them where the booby traps are. So then they know the landmines are out there, and just imagine if you are a soldier in the field of combat and you are every man's for themselves in this free fall, and you're like, these landmines are there, but you're like, I gotta soldier through this. And that's why we herald those who make it, into the upper echelons of society from the hood, because we're like, yo, this is a brilliant guy. Right. He saw the landmines and he made it out. We cherish those guys. But on the opposite sides of that, the people who look at that guy and made it out, and they're like, damn, yo, I hate that guy. He was smart enough to make it out. Yo, get him. That's all that you were just saying, that frustration. And it's part of what we talked about earlier with the black tax, which also is another socioeconomic factor that affects black and brown people here, melanated people in this country. Talk on that.
Well, the black tax is what, Sharon was talking about.
Sharon?
Sharon.
Sharon, yes.
You're more likely to be preyed upon by your own people that look like you before someone else is going to get you. That's more true. Than likely. I mean, we got to be realistic about this. That's true. This is the elephant in the room people don't want to talk about. Nope. We weren't born this way, though. When you look at melanated babies.
I like when you say that. That's the elephant in the room, though. We don't talk about it. I like that, man.
So the elephant in the room, and there's people call you a coon for speaking on it. But it's just the truth. It's there, and we have to address it.
Talk, man. Talk.
Talk. And this black tax is the way it's taxing of your peace of mind. On top of the fact that you have an occupying force in the system on top of you, we're preying on each other. And yes, all people from other neighborhoods kill each other as well, because you're more likely to be preyed upon by the people who live nearest to you. So the hate from people nearest to you is always stronger. You'll get more love for somebody who's not as close to you.
Yeah.
We see this all the time, right? Yeah. There's people on social media that I've never met before that I'm closer to than people who I actually grew up with, that show me more love on social media because they never met me. They're further away. Yeah. So, it's funny how the human mind and psyche works. That black tax, though, living amongst each other, like, if your neighbor is doing something that's a little intruding and you bring it to their attention, there's no nice way to say it. They're going to become offended, and they're going to be wrong and strong more times than not when dealing with our own people. You know what I'm saying? And it shouldn't be that way, but this is a reality going on in pretty much any hood.
Yeah.
And that's not a general statement, but I would say 78 to 82% of the time, what I stated, you're going to get that result which is we call it the black tax, because it's taxing on your peace of mind that not only am I fighting outside entities, but I'm fighting entities with people who look like me, but I understand where this comes from because I remind them of the poverty that they come from, that they hate, that lowers their self-esteem and then creates self-hate, which has to go somewhere. Then it turns into group hate, and I just happen to be the next individual on the bullseye to get, you know what.
It manifests itself. No, you're right about that. And, you know, it's unfortunate that Sister Sharon had to deal with that. You know, not all of us are bad, but I could draw the perfect parallel to what you were saying. My son, he plays basketball, and people will say, you know, so, you know, he's very good, doing his thing. People say, why do you move your son around from team to team to team to team? Why don't you just leave him on the team? And I said, because I'm like almost like my son's counselor. If my son is in a bad situation, I'm not going to leave him in a bad situation. I'm going to put him in a situation where he flourishes the best. And how he will be in a situation where he flourishes the best is with a team that values what he brings to the table. They see value in him. If you put your kid on a team where others don't see value in them, all it's going to do is create discord. And if they don't have a proper leader at that, or coach at the head of that team, who would rather see the guys work together, but yet he knows that there's discord on the team, well, that team will never reach their true potential, because they'll be competing against others and also themselves. So, you know, competition is healthy, but competition against your opponent, not against the guys who you share high fives with in the locker room. So the team that competes against itself always loses. Always loses. And it saddens, it really hurts my heart when I hear a lot of the comments about gender wars in melanated communities, when it's like the black man doesn't like the black woman or whatever. And it's like, we could disagree. We don't have to agree on everything. Not everybody, like you said before, when you're talking about our genetics, and what's in our DNA, and what's in our makeup and our design. You have to do due diligence before procreating with a person. You have to know that person's structure, their history, all of that. We don't necessarily conduct that due diligence, but in doing due diligence, we understand that nobody's perfect. There are people that are equal, but we're not going to agree on every single thing. But we have to be mature enough to understand that, and then we are able to move forward as a people. And I think in impoverished neighborhoods, the slightest of disagreements can be perceived as disrespect. And then a life is lost or taken or maimed, or multiple lives, because if I do harm to you, I not only harm myself and you, but I harm our families, because I have to go and be incarcerated and removed from the household, and you are no longer breathing or present with us in the physical, so your family suffers as well. So I don't mean to get a bit long-winded on that, but I definitely think that we have to change how we think. We have to change how we think and approach one another. But how we approach one another is that we have to see value in one another. And seeing value in one another cannot be led through material things, because that's not our culture. It's not our culture to see value in you because you drive a nice car, or you drive or live in a nice neighborhood. No, I see value in you because of what I learned from you. So you have to be able to see what you can learn from your fellow man, not what he is able to obtain through, I guess, whatever he uses means of economics or means of currency he uses to obtain what he likes or desires, So no, excellent point again, Eric. I mean, we could go on forever about this topic, man, for sure. It's an excellent topic, and like I said, thanks again once again for having me.
No, absolutely. Good points. Now, I think you said gender wars.
Yeah.
So, stripping us of our ability to govern our own communities has made our sisters, they don't trust our lead. When you're not in charge, of printing up money. Power don't earn money. Power print money. All right, and so when problems really happen and transactions have to happen, and she doesn't see that we're able to do it, and she has to go to the system, there's a loss of respect and disdain there. So it does create a gender war.
Yes.
This for us not being able to lead properly, to be able to lead, you have to own the land, you have to own the raw materials, the resources, and be able to calcify that down to the offspring. And since the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s to right now, currently, we've shown, you've heard me say this before, the melanated man, the black man, is a maxed out relationship credit card with no available balance. The majority of us. And even those that is a great analogy. Sorry to interrupt you, but that is great, man. That is great.
And sorry.
Yeah, and those of us who have the Jordans and the Dr. Dre's, the 50 Cent, it's still not your currency. You don't print it up. If you do, it's counterfeiting. So that in itself, all women look for that masculine energy to lead, and when we're not able to provide that, and she observes that, it creates it creates a gender war intrinsically. And so how do we fix this? It can be fixed, but we have to get past our own stumbling blocks that's been put there. We weren't born with these stumbling blocks inside of us, but it's there as you grow into your, single digits, teenage years.
Yeah.
And you look around, and then it's being reconfirmed by family members that you respect. Their ideology turns into your ideology, and now it's a belief, and these ain't shit. Excuse my language, I don't curse in this town. But I'm parroting what's being said out here. So the gender war is there. So this confusion now begins to create, again, a whole nother order. Gang culture starts being created. Because people, youngins respect power and authority. And when they don't see it in the so-called quote-unquote elders, they create an order of their own.
Fiefdom, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So with all that being said, we're going to close out now. Let your last endeavor be your best endeavor. I repeat, let your last endeavor be your best endeavor. Salute.